Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for tuning in for Sealaska Heritage Institute's February 1st Friday Q&A with our virtual artists in residence. My name is Jay Zeller. I work at SHI, and it is my pleasure to introduce Laine Rinehart. His Tlingit name is Nichyanagut, and he is of the Tehitan clan from Wrangell, Alaska. He is also child of the Kagwantan through his father's side. In the summer of 2010, he began weaving in Kay Parker's Raven's Tale class and has since gone on to work with Lily Hope and her mother, Clarissa Rizal, and many other women he looks to as mentors. He is immensely grateful for being allowed to participate in a way of being that would generally be unavailable to men, and strives to honor the practices and traditions of Chilkat weaving. If you have any questions, type them in the comments and I'll read them off to our guest. Laine Rinehart, thank you for joining us today.
Ganachish Hatigadi, Nichanagut Ye, Duasak, Ye Ayahat, Tiatan, Nahasati, Kagwantan Yadi Ayahat. My name is Laine Rinehart, and I am Raven of the Tiatan clan from Wrangell, Alaska, and also a child of the Kagwantan through my father's side. It's a pleasure to be here with the Sealaska Heritage Institute. So thank you for having me, and thank you for joining us on your first Friday. I hope you're enjoying it. Well-deserved weekend, I think. And we're here to discuss today, gender and sexuality, and, just kind of my experience being a, two-spirit, queer, individual that is a weaver and, is also Tlingit. I think that this is an important, relevant conversation to have, amongst ourselves and in the community as a whole, whether that be the LGBTQ community or the Native community. There's lots of us out there that, kind of intersect both. And so I think it's good for us to talk about these things. So I'm happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. To start us off, can you tell us a bit more about your journey and how you identify yourself?
Yeah, so, I was born in, 1984. I grew up in, kind of the early 90s, the mid 90s and the early 2000s. And, being, queer in Southeast Alaska at the time was kind of, challenging for me. I experienced, if not directly, indirectly, a lot of bullying from, my peers. And, I was always a little different. I remember kind of growing up with my friends and playing, with the girls, kind of doing like pajama parties and things like this, and playing with dolls. And, my family, I think they knew, I think pretty early on. It was kind of, I look back on those times, and I am just so grateful that my parents, I think from the beginning, accepted me. They, got me the Barbie dolls I wanted, the princess types of things that I gravitated towards. So, they never really, judged me for that. In fact, I kind of remember them, adjusting kind of like little songs or lullabies, that they would sing to me, to make them relevant to kind of who I was, or, who they felt I was. And, that was important to me. And, throughout my life, I kind of came out in high school, which was kind of a difficult experience to me. And I remember, being in the backseat of a car with a couple of my friends, and I told them like, I'm gay. And, there were two of my girlfriends, and they kind of just like paused and laughed and giggled. And they're like, oh, really? Like, well, thanks for telling us. But, they kind of knew, a lot of people in my life knew. And, as I kind of progressed, throughout my life, it's like, well, gay doesn't really define who I am either. It really doesn't. And I think kind of, the concept of gender and sort of the two-spiritedness that, is kind of prevalent amongst a lot of Native people, I think kind of more defines or kind of begins to kind of encapsulate, my experience in this world. And I think that's, kind of, where I am. I think, gender is, very much a spectrum, for myself. And, when I think of, the roles I kind of find myself in traditional that traditional context. I gravitate towards, I think the roles that, women in our Tlingit society had. I remember a number of years back at a kuik in Wrangell, we were preparing for a party, and I joined the women. They were meeting up, late at night, and we were, all hanging out, making, the yarn earrings that we wear during some of our ceremonies. And so I helped them with that. And, during their dance, they got up there in the clan house in Wrangell, and they did their dance. But part of me felt like, I should be up there with them. That felt, important to me at that time. And, I feel like if I had that, they would have welcomed me there as well. So yeah, no, I think it's important to kind of have these conversations with each other and our communities as a whole. Thank you for asking.
Thank you very much. For the next part, to add a little more context to tonight's discussion, is can you tell us about the history of weaving and how gender is a part of it?
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of, there's almost a sort of like, I don't know if you want to say famous story, or kind of like, I almost think of it as like kind of like a cult movie, kind of gains popularity throughout time. But there's this kind of story that goes back, and kind of Clarissa Rizal, has told it, throughout her life. And then, so I've heard it from, the story from Clarissa, from, Lily, and Ricky Tagaban, has recounted it as well. And it just kind of goes back into like, the 1980s. And there was a group of women being taught how to chilkat weave. And there was this kind of man who would show up. And I think like any great story, there's kind of variation with it. So I feel like I've heard a few recounts of it, but he was like really helpful, and he would, help set up the loom, help the women out. And one day he brought in his own, materials and, a loom. And I guess Jenny got, real upset, and she was like, men don't weave, men don't weave. And, he kind of left, heartbroken and in shame. And the women were kind of like, kind of stunned, I guess, and shocked. And, at one point, she turned to them and she's like, well, he wasn't funny. And, sometime later, I believe that there was another class in which a man was allowed to weave. And, I guess in, her mind, he was appropriate to weave, appropriate in spirit to weave. And so I guess, as many of us say, like funny men can weave. And yeah, so that's a little bit of the history as far as, through story. But yeah, no, many men, today weave, to spirit or gay, or, however they identify. I'm only one of them. There's Noea Tagaban, who's the sprucer weaver. Ricky was a weaver. Aya, who is, I believe, Haida, weaves. William White down in British Columbia is a pretty prolific weaver from, kind of Clarissa's generation. So, and there's many others, we're definitely not the only ones. So I'm in good company. I'm really grateful to kind of have that community support.
Thank you. Our next question is, when you first became interested in weaving, were you worried about that you were a man when trying to practice traditionally the woman's art? And how did you first find your mentor?
So this was actually at Celebration a few years ago, and gosh, probably like 2010. And I, wanted to learn how to weave, and I, took a Raven's Tail weaving class, and, I never felt at odds with it. It felt right to me. And, the women in the weaving community are absolutely some of the most, important, supportive people that I have ever met, in my life. And there's never been a question asked. They've never asked why. They, they just like welcomed me with like a warm spirit and heart. And, really it's one of the places that I feel the safest, where I felt the most at home in my life. So I've had, the benefit and, the honor of having, many mentors throughout my life. Really grateful to all of them. Just asked for help. One of my cousins was learning how to weave, and, I kind of remember, she was asking Lily Hope to weave, and I asked if I could tag along. Lily was like, yeah, sure. And, one night she kind of showed me how to do a circle, and I remember being up until like probably about midnight trying to learn how to do a circle, and I kind of got it a little bit, but definitely wasn't perfect. But yeah, no, there's never been a place where I felt more accepted, being both Native and then also, Two-Spirited. It's the community that I have felt absolutely the most support in. And, I'm grateful to, these women in my life, and a lot of them I look up to as almost like auntie figures. I know that, we kind of hear that kind of phrase thrown around a lot these days, but, it's really true. They go out of their way to help you, and you help them in return. And through that, that community foundation is laid. So, our lives are more filled, with love and peace and respect for each other. And so just happy to be a part of this community. It's a really great, wonderful place to be. So yeah, thank you for asking.
Thank you. For our next question, you mentioned that you were very welcomed. It was a warm welcome into the weaving community. How did they show you that you were welcomed? Was there anything specific that they did?
Just how, natural it just seemed for me to be there. Just how giving that they were of, their knowledge. I just felt that support, the people that kind of took me under their wings to show me things like basketry or how to work with chocat weaving or raven's tail weaving. Just the time, that they gave and the time that I gave in return. Time is a very precious, sacred thing. We only have so much of it. And there's kind of this saying, I think, that goes something along the lines of like, time is the most valuable thing that you can give people. And so just through that time that we spent together, I think, that's how they showed me that I was welcomed and encouraged along my path to become a weaver.
I definitely agree with that. Time is one of the best gifts you can give. We have a question from our comments.
Sure.
Let's see here. You're such a strong and accomplished artist. Would you consider mentoring other men interested in weaving?
Absolutely. If I think of, if I were ever kind of, honestly had the honor, I think, at that point, it's like, a two-way street. It would be an honor to mentor another weaver, man or woman, or, however they identify themselves as. It would be a very special thing. So yeah, yes.
Our next question is, as a male weaver and member of the LGBTQ plus community, what are some of the challenges that you've had to face on a daily working basis?
I don't feel like there's a lot of challenges working as a weaver. I think, if anything, that, this community has been extremely supportive to me. It's kind of helped me grasp a sense of my own identity as a human being on this planet. So not challenges in that regards, but, there are a lot of prejudices, out there in the world as a whole. So, and I think that my experience as, a native of the LGBTQ plus community has just like really given me a sense of strength and resolve to know that, despite, the biases or the prejudice that may exist elsewhere, that, within this community, that love and compassion and support we have with each other is extremely strong, and, that can't be broken. So, goodness cheese to, anyone along the way who has supported and showed their strength and encouragement for me. And I hope to, return that to other people as well.
It's so good to hear that that the weaving community is so healing and welcoming, and just a great place to connect to the culture with. How We talked before on how weaving has like connected you more to your culture.
Mhm.
Would you say that more than the art, it's also the community itself that is improving that connection?
Yeah, I think so. Beforehand it was, I'm not like a naturally like outgoing person. I'm kind of like a little quiet sometimes. And I think just kind of having that shared experience with other people is, just a really great way to kind of have a focal point or, a sense of commonality between us. And so, yes, absolutely. I'm grateful to, the people that I've met along the way and just kind of being able to sit there and pass the time and kind of like gossip and, hang out and laugh and, share our lives with each other. This has been a really great and wonderful thing. So yeah, just that community connection is, it goes beyond just like the art form and it extends into, the time we spend together, the language, as many of us are continuing to learn it. I try as hard as I can, but I'm probably more like a preschool level, which is my background as a preschool teacher. Like I know how to sing and count and, the colors and things like that. But yeah, the culture goes beyond just the art. The art is a result of the culture, I think.
Thank you very much. I have a question
Sure.
that was submitted to me before the live, actually.
No problem.
How have you deconstructed and broken the gender stereotyping through your weaving?
Yeah, I think just kind of, that resolve, just knowing that it's okay, it's just affirming to know that this is okay for me to do, as an individual, as a two-spirited person. And, there's lots of this kind of like happening right now amongst the weaving community as a whole, of which, I'm just, one person, but, I'm going to give a little shout out, to Lily Hope and Ricky Tagaban. They just are releasing the Theirs collection, which is a series of gender neutral chilkat jewelry, so like earrings and things like that. So I think that that's awesome. To see this starting to happen more and more, and kind of how, in contemporary times we can kind of use the art form to really convey these ideas of our experiences. So, I think it's been, useful for me to sit down, at my loom and, experience, my identity for who I am on my own.
My next question is, how would you say the gender norms have evolved since our history and our origins?
Yeah, so, kind of in preparation for this, I've really been kind of, I want to say in preface that, I'm not a linguist. I'm, not a historian. My knowledge of, the language, especially when we're talking about kind of pre-contact times, is very limited. But I've been talking to a friend of mine, Noea Tagaban, who was, very involved in the language. And so goodness cheese to him for continuing that. And we got into this discussion, in preparation for this. I asked him, I was like, was there a name for LGBTQ, members and Tlingit culture, before contact? And, he replied to me and he was like pretty quickly, actually, I just texted him. And he was like, well, if there was, it wasn't recorded. And, at first I was like, well, was it not discussed? Was it taboo to discuss these things? And things like those were the things that kind of ran through my mind initially. And he was like, well, we have a way of talking about things in Tlingit that are sacred, that are powerful, where we don't really address, the topic very directly. So like he was saying, we would never say that a woman is pregnant. We would say like a child like came about her, or like almost like, I don't know, found her or something like this. We wouldn't say I'm going hunting. We would say something like, I'm going to go walk about the forest, or I'm going to go look around. And that's how we would talk about hunting. So it was in his thoughts that, um, you know, this topic of gender and sexuality and LGBTQ folks was kind of approached in the same way. And, I'm not going to profess to know everything, but, through our dialogue, he kind of was saying, these people like that are members of the LGBTQ community today kind of would have probably been almost like respected as eeks or shamans, potentially, was one way of looking at it. And so, I walked away from that conversation just kind of having more of a sense of like, I don't know if these things were like issues back then, even within our culture. I don't know if these were things that had potentially already been resolved even. And, now, we kind of went through, that period of contact and colonialism where, our perspectives changed due to that. And so, I wonder how much of that kind of influenced, our beliefs today in a little bit. So I think that that's also kind of important to acknowledge, just, that exchange or, colonialism kind of, really impacted our belief structure for a period of time, and, still does, absolutely. And, I was kind of like searching for this answer for my individual identity, and then trying to kind of like think about it from like a cultural perspective of a Tlingit person and like, the early 1800s or 1900s. It would have been different back then. And so that experience was very different. But, we did exist. Clearly, we still exist today. And, that's what's important, I think.
Earlier, you provided me with a few photos to share. So I'm going to put those up on the screen while I ask my next question. But
Sure.
while I get that set up, we have a comment question. The work you're doing and that you're talking about is beautiful and so needed. Can't thank you enough. The biases and discrimination towards LGBTQ and two-spirited is recent and came with colonialism. Have you found reports or information about two-spirited folks in Tlingit history?
Not a lot. I think it does exist. I can't reference anything in particular across off the top of my head, but I do. I believe that there was at one point Ishmael Hope kind of posted something on his Facebook, talking about this, that there were kind of like men that lived in women, and I think this was more like in Puget Sound area, but definitely. We have always existed, throughout history, and, just because, it wasn't documented from a Western historical perspective doesn't mean that we weren't there, because, we're still here now, and we will continue to be here. So sorry, I don't have a whole lot more to offer on that subject, but I'm sure it's out there.
Thank you very much. So I'm sharing the census photo that you sent to me earlier today. Can you tell us a little bit about what this photo is?
This is, for me, I think one of the most, important to reaffirming things to look at. And, it's not a picture, it's not anything, it's just words on a page, but the census was taken in a Tlingit village. Forgive me, I don't know how to pronounce the name of the village, so I'm sorry about that. But it references, a person named John Kawadi, who was born in 1862. And, we don't have, I wish there was a picture of him and his work, but he is listed here as a blanket maker. And, at the time, who a blanket maker was a Chilkat weaver. And so here we have that like historical validation that throughout time, we have woven. It's okay for us to weave. And it was, Zachary Jones, who used to work for Sealaska Heritage Institute, shared this with me in a group on Facebook, and, goodness sheesh to him for the work that he does from the historical perspective and documentation of that. This is just, I think, a record of extremely important historical significance. It's okay, it's right for us. The answer is yes, we can weave.
Thank you very much. For the other two photos that you had shared with me, I'm afraid I think they might be too small to see on our big screen.
Okay. I can go ahead and just kind of describe what they kind of represent. And, this is another, they're actually just kind of like cards of descriptions of pieces. And you know, Zachary Jones also shared these with me, but unfortunately, I don't think we have the name. And, you know, I can't really attest or speak to this because, you know, I'm not a woman who is working in the realm of what would have been kind of like traditionally men's art, so to speak. But Louis Shotridge in 1927 was describing kind of, you know, the creation of, and I kind of had a hard time reading the handwriting, so I wasn't sure if it was like a house screen or a post, but a woman was helping with him with this at the time. And so again, I think that's also of, you know, great significance that we have, you know, women carvers. There's lots of women carvers today, you know, Alison Bremner, Marion Ross, you know, lots of great, wonderful female artists out there as well. So, you know, that's also very exciting, I think. And, you know, I kind of remember the story of, you know, one of Dolores Churchill's relatives. I can't, you know, forgive me, I can't remember if it was her mom or her aunt, but there was a time where she was helping with like carving of totem poles, and like kind of her aunts approached her and they were like, well, you know, are you gonna, and I think the Haidas have this kind of way of like picking one thing and like really mastering it. But her aunts approached her and they were like, well, you know, are you gonna weave or are you gonna, you know, carve totem poles? And you know, at that decision, she went ahead and made the choice to go ahead and become a wonderful, you know, amazing basket weaver and hat maker. And so, yeah, you know, regardless of like, you know, where we decide to put our efforts and energy, and, you know, the beauty is there.
We have an observation in our comments that from the census page, there are 2 men listed on the census page as a blanket maker. One is 38 and one is 65.
That's right. Forgive me. Yeah. Yeah, 2. There's at least 2 historically.
There you go. My next question is for organizations like SHI who promote traditional art practices like weaving, how do you think we can improve the representation of LGBTQ community members and male artists in the art of weaving?
I think just kind of having this continued dialogue and back and forth exchange is a really important first step. You know, thank you. You know, for that, I feel like I alone can't provide an answer to that question. I think that that's a discussion that we need to have as a community amongst each other. So hopefully that dialogue, you know, will continue to happen.
Thank you very much. Our next question is from the comments. Are there any designs or pieces that you don't feel comfortable weaving?
Designs or pieces. I think that this kind of would go more into like, you know, more of like kind of like the, you know, we have like a lineage in Chilkat weaving that's still very much, you know, alive and through us. And, you know, so I'll have to like refer back to like, you know, Clarissa and Jenny, who would say like, don't weave a 5-finger hand. You know, that's kind of like, you know, ego coming in the way, especially like a human hand. And I think kind of like the intent that I've been told behind that is that like, you know, we know that, you know, a person made or wove a robe or something like this. Like there's no need for us to continue to like put, you know, our ego and identity into it beyond what we already have. And so that's something that I will, you know, continue to honor and respect as those teachings that kind of have been passed down to us. I think that that's very important. So yeah, no 5-fingered hands, that's for sure.
All right, if you are just tuning in, we are talking with weaver Laine Rinehart, discussing gender norms in weaving. If you have questions, please type them in the comments section and I will read them off. We are also still accepting virtual artist in resident applications for the upcoming months. If you'd like to be featured, please apply. You can apply using the link that will be posted in the comment section. So our next question that I have for you, Laine, is do you feel that there are any resources or opportunities missing for men or any weaver in the art of weaving at the moment? Is there anything that we can do to get more people interested in weaving?
Yeah, so, you know, I think, you know, weavers as a whole, there's like so much time and effort that, you know, goes into the preparation of the materials in order to do our art form. You know, collecting the cedar bark, spinning the warp in order to, you know, do a weaving, whether that's, you know, a small weaving or a large weaving. It's extremely time intensive. And so, you know, I want to kind of like speak to that mostly, and that just like rising, you know, a woman's art to the place of where it's looked at as equally important as like a screen or a totem pole. And, you know, Lily, you know, speaks to this. You know, this art is valuable. It is time intensive. It takes, you know, many, many hours to shape even a circle or, you know, an ovoid and things like this. Like we can't just, you know, draw it. And if we make a mistake, we can't erase it. We have to, you know, go back and take out many hours of work. And so, you know, and I think you see this across, you know, history as far as, you know, the way a woman's art is valued, whether that's like tapestry or knitting or, you know, baskets or anything of this nature. Like it's always kind of been like reduced to this like craft level when it's like really a high art form. And, you know, it should be valued as such. You know, the community that's developed, the attention to detail that goes into all of this artwork is, you know, extremely valuable. And so you kind of see that throughout history where, you know, it was kind of like, especially from a Western perspective, reduced to this level of like, you know, crafts work or cottage industry and things like this. And like, you know, there was a time where, you know, even historically speaking and Northwest Coast men's art was like, you know, the carver was documented or, you know, something like that, or, you know, the painter of the house screen was documented, but, you know, we don't have a lot of documentation of like historical robes and stuff of the women. There is some out there, thankfully. So a lot of gratitude for, you know, that documentation that does exist, but there's plenty out there where it was, you know, especially throughout, you know, all of North America where, you know, a lot of women, you know, who made these beautiful objects weren't acknowledged by name. So yeah, no, I think just kind of having that dialogue and discussion of, you know, this is an art form of immense value and importance.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. We are out of questions. So is there is there anything else that you'd like to mention in response to maybe being Two-Spirit, or do you think it is because you're Two-Spirit that you find a home in weaving, or could even a man who isn't Two-Spirit also find the same joy in it, do you think?
Yeah, you know, that's you know, that's an interesting, you know, question. You know, historically speaking, it was like, yes, it was, you know, men who were, you know, gay or trans or two-spirited, like, you know, they were the ones allowed to weave. So, you know, I can't, you know, I'm not a master weaver. I can't, you know, I can't make that decision. I can only, you know, refer to the people that came before me when it comes to that question. So, you know, if you're funny, you can weave. So, and I think that kind of encapsulates it for me. But, you know, I really appreciate everyone's time. Goodness sheesh for having me, you know, on Sealaska Heritage Institute. And there'll be more videos coming your way for everyone to enjoy.
I'm going to pause you. We got more questions.
Okay, yeah.
Always when I say, you know, we need more questions, that's when the comments start coming.
No problem.
Your story is super powerful and inspiring. Related to your comment about the amount of detail captured in weaving, have you considered capturing your experience through a woven piece?
You know, to some degree I have a piece called like Dually Enrolled, and it kind of is my, and this isn't going into kind of like, you know, my identity so much along the gender spectrum or sexuality, but it has more to do with this concept of, you know, being of two different tribal backgrounds. So, you know, my father is Tlingit and my mother is from Taos Pueblo. And so you know, I don't have it with me. It's currently with my brother's family down in Portland. But with this piece, you know, and Chilkat weaving, faces typically has a mask of like one color, whether it be blue or green or yellow. And with this particular piece, I guess I can describe is that it was divided down the center line. So one half was yellow and one half was green. And so that just kind of encapsulates my experience as being, in a sense, biracial, really when it comes down to it. So yes, I have kind of explored Chilkat as a way for me to express my identity. And in the future, I hope to do so more.
Looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah.
Another question that we have, is there an art piece that has especially moved you? And if so, what was it about that piece that made such an impression?
Yeah, no, I think I kind of like almost have to like refer to kind of almost like performance art. I'm like really intrigued by performance artists. I'm not, not necessarily a performance artist myself, but there's lots of, people throughout history who have kind of like explored, gender and sexuality through their art form. And, there was like Jane County, who was like a kind of like a punk scener in like the 1970s, like proto-punk scener in the 1970s. And I'm absolutely fascinated by her, and Tlingit culture. We have beautiful robes, and, all the ancient robes, really inspire me with, their detail, the time that it took to weave them, things like that. The baskets that, have been woven throughout history is just mind blowing to see, the small little spruce roots that were false embroidered. So yeah, those scenes give me a lot of inspiration in my life. A lot of Salvador Dali's work gives me inspiration. A lot of my contemporary friends that weave, give me a lot of inspiration as well. So yeah.
Our next question is, someone was told a story from an elder who, as a young man, said that there was a Tlingit house for two spirit men. He's not sure where, but have you heard of such a house?
I have not. So, thank you for sharing that with us. That's really cool, like awesome to hear about, actually. So yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing. And, if you have any more information, you should, share it with people by all means. So, thank you. Goodness, sheesh.
Our next question is, how can someone who identifies as LGBTQ, a community member, and a multiracial use weaving to explore their identity and heal? Like, what about it healed you?
I think even just like, putting your hands in the material and just like having, reverence and saying a prayer, acknowledging like the love you have for yourself. Cause like, for me, I think a lot of that is what happens when I weave. That, I think about the friends and family who have supported me along my journey. And the love that they have for me also kind of goes into my ability to love myself as a human being. And so having that self-love and worth is, really important. And, by all means, continue to, push your own boundaries as far as how you can express yourself. For me, I still like to try to, stay true to kind of like the aesthetic of, traditional weaving, but, that's up for you as an artist to explore.
Our next question is, someone would like to know about the warps hanging behind you. Is it a new project?
Yeah, so actually this will be documented in a series of videos that we're doing for Sealaska Heritage Institute, but this is actually, behind me is, the warp for a full-size Chilkat robe. I was given a grant by the Burke Museum in Seattle, Washington to help me with this project. It's about a little bit more than a year in the making. I applied for the grant and received it in February of last year, so actually about a year ago. But with COVID and everything, I was supposed to go down and demonstrate down there, but hopefully we're looking to have March reopening. Well, the Burke has reopened or will be reopening shortly, and so hopefully in March I'll be able to go down there. But yeah, this is a full-size robe. that is hanging behind me. And so through the series of videos with Sealaska Heritage, we'll kind of be documenting, the process that it took for me to reach this point. The spinning of the robe, the preparation of the materials, the design, the family members that have supported me along the way. So I hope you can catch that.
Our next question is, are there any LGBTQ weaving pieces that have inspired you?
Ricky Tagaban has quite a few, and his art is, extremely inspirational to me. He has a lot of, pieces that use chokat weaving in order to explore identity. And, goodness sheesh to him for, kind of really being like a pioneer, at least amongst, our current generation of, male or, LGBTQ weavers. Really appreciate your work, Ricky. Thank you.
The next question I have was submitted to me. Can you share with us, kind of just like walk through your routine really quick and how you mentally approach the material?
Yeah, I say kind of like I have a moment of like gratitude for it and reverence. And my mom's like way of being, like everything is sacred, and I think that that's very true of Tlingit culture too. So just having lots of respect, trying to make sure that other things in your life are taken care of too. There's kind of like the saying, I think it goes like, make sure your house is clean before you leave. And I don't think we were just talking about folding the laundry or doing the dishes or vacuuming. I think it really kind of referred to like, having that balance in your life. So that's important I think. And then, yeah, just, it's really like a blessing to be able to have that time, at a loom. So yeah, just having that gratitude.
Our next question is, are you available to speak to small regional areas once COVID is over because they feel that your spirit could be inspirational to others?
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, as this pandemic subsides, we'll be able to kind of go out and meet each other more often. And yeah, that would be great.
Along that vein, would you want to be like a virtual mentor to people, even during the COVID?
Yeah, feel free to contact me through Facebook or Instagram. Reach out to me and we can discuss possibilities. I'm not closed-minded to anything. But yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Let's see if there are any other questions in our comments here. There are a lot of very wonderful comments that I wish I could just tell you. We should
okay.
check them out later once the live is over.
Okay.
They don't want the conversation to end. So let's see here. Would you be willing to do a weaving project that maybe included various LGBTQ flag designs?
Oh, shoot. Yes. I don't want to like let the cat out of the bag, but I know Lily has like a project in the making. Oops, excuse me. Am I still there? Okay. Where somebody's spinning like different colors of warp. And so I hope that's okay for me to mention here, but there's more to come. Let's just put it that way. There's absolutely more to come. And yeah, it's a community effort. So yes.
Well, now you got me all excited, and I feel bad that I can't ask more about that because I'm very interested. All right, then let's see here. I don't think I have any other questions for you today. Is there anything else that you want to mention?
Ooh, well, thanks for bearing with me. I was kind of telling Jay that this is the first time I've really spoken like publicly about this. So goodness cheese for, all the support that everyone is having for me. I can feel your love through the screen. It's very important to me to have this conversation with, know you all today, and thank you for being here. Goodness, geez,
And thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We're very honored to be the first public place that you talk about this. Thank you everyone for joining with us today. And thank you again, Laine, for answering our questions. The rest of the videos in this series will be on YouTube, on the Sealaska Heritage Institute channel. Have a wonderful first Friday, everybody, and have a good evening.
All right, bye.